Hi, I'm Annie. I'm a 29-year-old trans woman. I was born in 1995, and I've been gaming from as early as I could hold my dad's Super Nintendo controller. It's my biggest hobby, and I love to obsess over all of the games I've ever played, and all the games that I want to play. And I definitely want to talk about them to anyone who would listen. That's why I host my own show called What Is This Game?, where I do exactly that with my good friend Dylan.
Hello, I am Dylan. I run my own YouTube channel, Dylan from Somewhere, where I talk about all types of nonsense, but I really don't get into gaming anymore. So I jump onto What Is This Game with Annie. But who doesn't like a nice hit of nostalgia? And back when my brothers had the NES, I that's when I picked it up, a generation before Annie. And going through the Genesis is what I had. My cousins had the Super Nintendo, had to go across town in order to play Mario and what he was doing in that generation, all the way up to the 3D world of Nintendo 64 and the PlayStation 2. Oh, what fun we had. That's why we are bringing you a blast from the past.
Absolutely. Games nowadays are way too complicated, they're way too expensive, and they're way too long. I miss when games were just, simple and brutally hard. We'd love to come aboard the Yo, Remember the 90s team to bring you a podcast and a live show where us two geeks come together, and maybe even you, to play the games on stream, and then once we're done, we'll come together and record a whole podcast out of it.
But wait, there's more. There are console games that are still around and we have a lot of fun with, both back in the day and currently. We will also get into the arcade games, the old gaming cabinets, and pinball. Boy, I'm still a pinball nerd. If there is a pinball bar in your city, I will find it. I have a lot of fun with the consoles, the arcades, and if it happened in the 90s, we are here to cover it.
Let's just let the product speak for itself. We put together a promo reel where you can see all of the things that we like to talk about and some of the things that we sure you know about. So, without further ado, here it is.
Super Mario is back. You've never had an adventure like this. It's everything you've dreamed of and worlds more. It's Super Mario 2, only from Nintendo. Now you're playing with power.
Super Mario 2 was weird. It was released in Japan first because it's, a Japanese studio. Nintendo's from Japan. They released Super Mario 2, but they thought that it would be too hard for the Americans, so they kind of ported another game. I don't remember what it is, but that's from the 80s, so it's a little bit before this.
And I agree with them. Very hard. And no graphical upgrade whatsoever. It was kind of like modded levels you see nowadays because they didn't change the aesthetics at all. Us here in America, we did get different animations because the real Super Mario 2 from Japan, it looked exactly like Mario 1. And I was a big fan of Super Mario 2 that we got and the music. No Bowser in Mario 2 because it wasn't America, because it wasn't a Mario game to begin with.
Right, absolutely. So there was different bosses, different characters that interestingly became kind of permanent staples through the Mario series, like Birdo. Birdo was introduced
and the Shy Guys. Those are the big ones that made it to the main series from
right, they were
Mario
introduced
2.
As kind of a clone of a different game where it's like some sort of flower adventure. And then they ended up becoming just staples. The bomb rat with the glasses, he makes it in a couple of appearances. And then whoever the Frog King is.
King Wart. Wart, maybe.
Yeah, something like that, yeah. But he makes it in at least one more game. So it's interesting to see these characters that were just kind of made as clones ended up becoming fan favorites.
Super Mario Bros. 3 from Nintendo. Now you're playing with power.
Super Mario 3 was absolutely just on another level. Just a couple of months into the 1990s, we get Super Mario 3.
Interestingly enough, because of different like release cycles and how things work internationally, Super Mario 3 it was released in 1988 over in Japan.
But only in Japan.
But for us, it came out in the beginning of 1990, so it definitely falls into, remember the 90s type game. This game is, without a doubt, very, very influential to the rest of the series.
The first time we get an overworld map, which they still have to this day, and Super Mario World expanded on it. You can choose to skip over levels. Even in the first world, there's, I believe, number 3 and number 4. You can choose which one of those to go in the path with, and do both if you're a completionist, or just do one if you're trying to get to the end.
It's nice because you can choose a different route, and maybe the level that you already did wasn't a level you liked. In 3, a lot of the forced scrolling levels were becoming more and more common. One of the very first levels is kind of like a sky level where you have to jump and avoid falling platforms, and the entire time the screen is scrolling to the right, so it adds another layer of frustration. And if you don't like that, then on your next playthrough, you can be like, I'm not going to go that way, I'm going to go this way and do the water level.
Once you figure out where the warp whistles are, you use the warp whistle, you just skip that right over. Very often it was used in the water world, I believe World 3. Hell with it. I hate this water world. Screw you, Kevin Costner. I do not want to be here. The power-ups. It actually goes into the first time you can save your power-ups. You get a scroll at the bottom. You could hold a lot of stuff, and you had Toad's house, in which you could get more power-ups. The flying mechanic, they implemented it very well.
The P-Wing is just like the Tanuki tail, the raccoon upgrade, but you could just use it forever. You can just constantly spam the fly instead of having to sprint and get fast enough to take off.
When you get to Bowser, there is a really fast scrolling auto scroller, and that is where I always save my P-Wing up for, because it was too damn fast for me. Lots of places to just get hit by a cannon or accidentally fall down. This is the P-Wing. We are flying over this entire level. You mentioned the Tanuki suit. That is much more rare. You only come across that a few times, and we didn't know what the heck it was. We didn't read the manual. We just called it the teddy bear.
Well, even if you had read the manual, it has a secret function. What they didn't tell you is that if you pressed, I think it was down in A or B or some button combination, you would turn into a stone statue and you'd just be completely immortal.
That's something I actually didn't know until the internet told me. That was a mechanic. I was like, I've been playing this game for as long as I've had thought, and I did not know that we could turn into Stone Mario with the teddy bear, as I referred to.
How did you get into Super Mario 3?
It's a very early memory of mine. My brothers had the NES. I'm the youngest of 3, and when it came out, we were very quick to get it, because everyone was waiting for Mario 3. They'd probably seen The Wizard at that point, a feature-length advertisement for Mario 3, starring Fred Savage.
For me, what my dad was really into, he was what got the family kind of into gaming, because he liked Super Mario 3 and he wanted somebody to play with. So once the kids were old enough, he'd be like, hey, you want to play this game with me? And, we'd run through levels together, and he would teach us secrets. I think it's the third or fourth world. If you stand on a block and then you stand there long enough and you hold the crouch key, you'll fall through the block behind the stage, and then you can run behind the level, behind all the 2D assets.
I think that was in Nintendo Power. Something I just always had the knowledge of was being able to crouch down and run behind and just skip that part. I think you might go to a Toad house. I think that might be a secret Toad house right there.
Some of them have secret Toad rooms. Some of them have the warp whistles. The real thing that is really advantageous for is another secret my dad taught me. In Mario 1 and 2, at the end of the stage, you would hit a flagpole or some sort of objective, and then you would be done with the level. In Mario 3, there would be an item box at the end, and if you jumped up and hit it, or if you just walked and whatever, you could get an item because it was rolling. But if you were sprinting at max speed, and then you jumped into the item box, you would get whatever the best item was.
There was the 3. You get 3 stars in a row, and I believe that got you 5 lives, because those did matter. One of my first times actually beating the game. I was on life 0. It takes a little bit of figuring out on how to kill Bowser. The Bowser fight is a fun fight because he's just trying to crush you. He's jumping up and crushing you, and it takes you a little bit to realize that, oh, you just allow him to crush through the bottom, and he just accidentally causes his own demise by crushing through so many layers of brick trying to get you that no more Bowser.
The game doesn't really have like a story per se.
You do get the letters from Peach at the end. There is a airship at the end of every level where you face one of the Koopa kids. So they're your main boss on an airship, and they have transformed the king. That gave me a giggle of seeing what is the king in this land transformed into, that we've now got to go get the magic wand and transform him back.
Along your journey to save Princess Peach, who at the time was not Princess Peach. She was still named Princess Toadstool. She hadn't been actually dubbed Peach yet.
64, that's right. That's where the official Princess Peach took over.
Mario 3 has stood the test of time because you could pick up Mario 3 right now and be like, wow, this is a good game. It's a little hard, but yeah, this is a good game.
Words can't describe the endless challenge of Super Mario World.
You've never faced the challenge of so many enemies, so many obstacles. You've never needed help from a dinosaur before. Created especially for the Super Nintendo Entertainment System, it's a bit more exciting, a bit more challenging, a bit more graphic, a bit more colorful, a bit more realistic, a bit more levels, a bit more secret, a bit more friends, a bit more sound, a bit hotter, a bit cooler, a bit weird, a bit more revolutionary, a bit more Mario, a bit more of what you want.
Suddenly the world's a more exciting place to be.
So now you're playing with power, superpower.
Super Mario World is the direct sequel to Super Mario 3, and even though it doesn't like officially have the title, it is Super Mario Bros. 4.
The change from 4 to World was to help reflect how much bigger and much more vast that this Mario was. It changed to World because they were like, we need in the title to tell them this is big.
It was released in Japan in 1990. It came out just under a year and a half after Super Mario 3. It might have seemed like a quick release for the American audience, but in honesty, it had been in development for several years. Super Mario 3 had the overworld. Super Mario World kind of had a sort of free mechanic.
Mario 3, yeah, it was just a static screen that you could move around in the overworld, where this, yeah, the overworld moved along with you and scrolled. It felt much more alive.
There was multiple paths instead of just being able to avoid one or two levels or choose between going this way or that way. There were secret routes, there were secret worlds, there was upgrades that you could make, like upgrade the map and get even more secret routes. The game had so much going on. Super Mario World was a built from the ground up game. Super Mario 3 built off of Super Mario 1 and Lost Levels. It built off the core mechanics and used some of the code, some of the sprites, reused some assets because it was cheap and it was easy to just, move it over because they hadn't really invented a new engine. Super Mario World plays way better than 3, in my opinion. The movement is so much more fluid. There's so much more colors because of the new console. The animations are better.
Everything that we got in Super Mario 3 was expanded upon in Super Mario World. The flying mechanic, it took me a lot longer to get used to the cape. You got to figure out the cape in Super Mario World a bit more.
Yeah, interestingly enough, my mom is the one who taught me how to use the cape. My mom was the one who kind of figured out and taught me that, like, if you button press it, you can kind of just glide with it. And there are some secret parts of some of the early stages that there's like a whole room full of coins, and if you get good at the gliding mechanic, you can get like 1 or 2 1-up. If you just have the cape, most levels become pretty trivial because you have an attack, you can fly, you have a sort of defense move. If you use the dive and then you get enough speed falling down, you can literally do like a ground pound slam and earthquake the ground a little bit and damage enemies nearby you. One of the biggest reasons they wanted to have all the new tech is for Shigeru Miyamoto's pet project, quite literally. For years and years, he wanted a green dinosaur character in his games.
He really wanted it in Super Mario 3 And that was one of the things that was on the cutting room floor that he picked back up immediately. The dinosaur must be in this one. We have the technology.
Finally, they put Yoshi in the game, and he's kind of the protagonist of the game, despite you being Mario and being the character playing.
You're in Dinosaur World, right?
Yeah, you start out in Dino Land.
Actually, you do start out on Yoshi's home right off the bat. Yoshi acts as an extra hit point. He kind of acts as a double jump, and that would actually hurt me as a child when I'm
Having
jumping
to kill him.
over the chasm, and I need to
Poor
sacrifice Yoshi going down the chasm so Mario can live.
If he got hurt, he would run and his face would look all upset because, you know, his animations, his sprites are pretty good, and
He's
he'd
got a little
wobble.
squeal.
Yeah, I love Yoshi. He's such a good character.
We do come across the different colored Yoshis with different powers. And a lot of them you come across for the first time in an egg. The yellow one ground pounds, the red one spits out fire. The blue Yoshi has the flight. That was always my favorite Yoshi because flight is just fun.
All of the additions that this game brings kind of become permanent for all of the 2D games going forward. The game has, I believe, including bonus levels and everything like that, it has a whopping 96 stages. And if you've played any Mario games, you know that, yeah, there's reused little bits and there's reused mechanics because they want you to be familiar while they also challenge you to do new things sometimes. It's all packed on one cartridge. This is one of the few games that actually saved your progress right on the cartridge.
Yes, brand new. I think there might have been 3 slots, actually.
You're right. Super Mario World, you had a whopping 3 slots to save in. You had the A, B, and C slot, so, you know, as long as nobody in your family fucked with your slot, you could be like, oh yeah, you can play Super Mario World, just play on save C. Having your save deleted as a kid was one of the worst things ever because you can't get that back on actual save games like that. You had to enter like codes or like have literally a whole screen with like 24 digits that you had to remember, or have a notebook or have a camera somehow, you know, like take Polaroids of it. However you stored it, you would have to remember all these codes. With the passwords, you could always go ask your friend for, you know, like their password or whatever to get kind of a copy of their save. But yeah, if somebody overwrit your save, you were screwed.
There was a 900 number. A 900 number existed, and Nintendo Power existed. Those were the people you could ask.
Flip to the back, and there'd be like the cheats and secret tips and tricks section, so you could like learn about it and be like, oh, in World 2, if you get a cape and you fly over this thing up on top of the screen, there's like a 1-up over here. And it's like, oh, okay, cool, I didn't know that. Now I can get an extra free life just for reading this magazine. The feeling of finding secrets and stuff, it was massively expanded on this game because you would see in the overworld, like right in World 2. So as soon as you get out of Dino Land into whatever the next little world is called, the main path takes you to the left around the lake. But if you, on the first stage of World 2, you figure out the secret, you can go forward into the lake and do an underwater level. And if you find another secret, you can go further into the lake, or if you find the regular route, you can go to a secret hidden boo house.
Also, a mechanic Mario 3 did not have. Once you beat a world, it was inaccessible to go back to that world. So you could keep going back as much as you wanted.
Oh, you're right,
to each
backtracking.
world.
As long as you didn't get a game over and lose your progress and give up, all you had to do was just keep persisting, and you could 100% the game.
Getting to the Star World and the very 90s titled levels of tubular,
Gnarly, radical. Oh yeah, if you did the underwater level and then you went to the boo house and then you did the secret completion for the boo house, you got to go into your first Star World. The levels were very challenging because everything up until then, you know, you're just in World 2. But you go into the Star World and you get enemies you've never seen. And if you complete all 5 of them, a lot of the sprites in the game change drastically.
You're now fighting more mustachioed men rather than turtles.
In some of the underground levels, there's little moles. Instead of them just being little guys, they're freaking huge. The color scheme changes a little bit, and I think you get some more extra music tracks.
Once again, giving us a new mechanic for warping around to different parts of the map.
Right, the Star Road functions kind of as your sort of fast travel route. If you've completed it, instead of going literally manually back through the whole path all the way back to World 1. You can just jump in the Star World and then just go 5 little nodes, and then boop, I'm back at World 2.
With the Mario Brothers and plumbing's a game.
It turns out there's a show for Super Mario 3 and Super Mario World. I've seen a lot of the scenes in people's like reviews of the games and other media through Mario, or whenever people were reviewing the Mario movie, they would compare it to like some of the shows, and I'd be like, where's this from? Bowser kind of looks more like a dragon instead of a turtle. Super Mario 64 is kind of his staple look. You know, the big green turtle shell with the orange accents, the little tips. He's now a big turtle instead of kind of like a turtle dragon. So, I really like to see Bowser's change of appearance over the years.
I don't know if you remember seeing it, but Yoshi was like a little child voice in the cartoon.
Yeah, I'm glad they decided in the game to just make him make noises. Just like, I'm glad they didn't give him a voice, because none of the characters really do, and they don't really need to.
With all the great games you can get for a Game Boy, you better believe you can spend your whole life playing Game Boy.
You don't stop playing because you get old. Game Boy from Nintendo.
The Game Boy, we could do a whole episode on, like, the Game Boy and the Game Boy Advance, or Game Boy Color, Game Boy Pocket, the SP, the evolution of the Game Boy to the DS. Like, I know a lot of that happened after the 90s, but the original Game Boy was so influential and had so many, like, third-party upgrades, first-party upgrades, magnifiers. It was such a cool piece of toy.
I found it funny when they initially, before Game Boy Color came out, they just re-released the actual physical console as different colors, and that helped get it a boost. It's not just gray anymore. You can get it in red and blue. Ooh.
Do you guys have Battletoads?
Excuse me, if you guys continue to call, I will have to report these phone calls to the police. It's harassment.
Oh, I apologize.
And then it will go into the law's hands, and it's out of my hands from there. You may think it's funny, but it really isn't.
Battletoads is fun.
Battletoads was a 1990s game, and that was so fun until level 2. It was right away that they just jacked up the difficulty to get you to keep playing it. And that was another fun thing of moving to the Super NES, is that they could make the games bigger for you to do more instead of having a ridiculous difficulty to keep you playing the games over and over.
The Sega Genesis has blast processing.
Nintendo at this point was the king of gaming, but in the early 1990s, they actually got the first home console competition that they ever got with the cool 1990s mascot. Sonic was the cool one where, look at Mario, he's fun and all, but we've got our cool blue buddy who just goes a million miles an hour. Sonic went very fast. He had nowhere near the amount of levels as Mario did, but the levels were very big, despite the fact that it was very much marketed on the fact that you could just zoom through the levels. I explored the levels. There is a lot going on. Sonic, he goes fast. He's cool. He's got blast processing.
Hey! You still don't have a Sega CD? Huh? What are you waiting for? Nintendo to make one? Wrong answer, man. Show 'em!
Mega CD.
Something that absolutely came out in the 90s was the Mega CD, the CD drive, the upgrade for the Sega Genesis Mega Drive. You would literally like stack the two consoles on top of each other, and they would do like a fusion dance and become one big brick of plastic.
Once again, a lock-on. Sega was really into the lock-on. They saw the Power Rangers and the Megazord going around and locking on to Tommy's big Dragon Zord. They were like, yeah, we can do that too with our technology. I did not have the Sega CD add-on. I just had the vanilla Genesis with the cartridges, and Beavis and Butthead was a fun one, but the Sega CD and the full motion games I missed out on.
I also missed out on it because I didn't have the Sega CD, and I also didn't have a computer good enough to play any of these type of games. The big controversial one that a lot of people have probably heard of is Night Trap. It's a full motion video, which if you don't know, it's literally like you're watching video and you can like change camera angles and you can sometimes rewind and fast forward footage, but it's the whole game is you watching stuff and interacting with what you're watching. Some teenagers are having a sleepover. There's a break-in, and there's a lot more to it. The shit escalates, and it's so real because it's full motion video. There's like they actually acted out these scenes, and parents freaked out when they were watching their kids play this game, or even if themselves played this game. They're like, what the heck?
Mortal Kombat was also on the forefront of the everyone teen mature rating becoming a thing.
The ESRB was essentially started because of Night Trap, and the ESRB is the Entertainment Software Rating Board. You don't have to rate your game, but if you don't rate your game, you're not getting into Walmart, that's for sure. Video game developers a couple of times kind of crossed the boundary, I think a little bit too soon, and made the more liberal audience be like, this is crazy. You're gonna make my kids want to fucking suck right in the streets and steal a car and shoot people. It's like, maybe you should check on your parenting then.
Sonic 2 handles stubborn stains, embarrassing bald spots, no problem. It even slices and dices, makes thousands of julienne fries. But wait, you can play it too.
With 10 levels, his new buddy Tails, and blast processing, the new split screen lets 2 play. And a spin dash that can be startling.
Sonic 2 introduced Tails. Could fly. You could have a second player operate Tails and fly you different places.
Wow, that would have been huge for me and my siblings, because we like to play the games together, and Mario, while being 2-player, was not co-op. Being able to play together on the same screen would have been incredible.
Sonic can lose Tails, both with and without a second player. You can be zooming around and just lose Tails, and eventually will come flying back next to you. Hey, I'm here, buddy. I didn't really play co-op as much with Sonic and Tails.
Do it! New Sonic 3 is now available.
Sonic 3 is coming.
Look for the shadow!
On Groundhog Day. Make that Hedgehog Day.
Sonic? Are you guys in there?
Sonic 3 was broken up into 2 games. So Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles, this was supposed to be one game. Sonic 3 had a save function. Sonic 1, 2, and Knuckles didn't have it, but you put Sonic 3 and Sonic and Knuckles together, that save function is back.
Lock-on technology. So you can play Knuckles in Sonic 2 and 3. It's revolutionary.
I was a fan of the Sega music. Sonic had some bangers on it. And Michael Jackson did indeed work on Sonic 3. That was always a rumor. And apparently he asked for his name to be taken off because once they condensed down the music that he did for it into the Genesis, he wasn't happy with it, but I was happy with it. I'm still happy with it. If you get the new Sonic on the Switch or whichever console that they were re-released on, they don't have, whichever ones Michael Jackson had his fingers in, we won't talk about where else his fingers were, but those are not there anymore.
You can start a game in the arcade and finish it at home.
There were a few arcade games still keeping those alive in the 90s before the 2000s came around and really just wiped out arcades for kids. The Beat 'em Up Turtles game, another fun experience of a beat 'em up that you could do with up to 4 players that, of course, you couldn't do until the Nintendo 64. The Simpsons, another one in the arcade of a beat 'em up that I finally beat recently. Thank you, adult arcades.
Kind of like around when I was born, the third generation of the console wars kind of hit. We're talking Sega Saturn, PlayStation, and the famous Nintendo 64. But the third generation of console wars hit in Japan in 94, and then it took a year for them to come over.
Since Nintendo wasn't the king of that era, undisputedly, a lot of other people tried to get in. The 3DO, I recall my brother had.
Burn Rubber in Road Rash from Electronic Arts.
Road Rash was really a fun game. It's just a motorcycle racing game, and you're going down a public street. So there's cars coming at you. You could hit your opponents. You could punch them. You've got a pipe that you can get and knock your opponent off his bike. There's a chain at some point. Hell of a racing game. Also had little mini elements of combat. It did have a Genesis port, but it didn't have Rusty Cage. Like I'm missing the soundtrack. And people think of Rusty Cage as the Road Rash song. A lot of people just default to, I believe it's Stone Temple Pilots. Rusty Cage is, oh, they're playing the Road Rash song. It's always been important, the soundtrack, but having actual real songs, something that came in with the PlayStation era.
Introducing Sega Saturn.
You are approaching Saturn.
Sega Saturn. The benchmark of engineering excellence. A head-snapping 500,000 polygons per second.
Wow. Sega Saturn came out in November of 94.
Sega had a lot of momentum. They overtook the market from Nintendo for at least a little bit. Sega, after the Genesis, they just had so many stumbles and could not capitalize once again as they did with the Genesis. I was a Sega Genesis household. My cousins were the Super Nintendo household in the early 90s. Sonic tried to go into 3D way too early. Sonic 3D Blast on the Genesis and the Saturn, or was it the CD, whichever one. It was an isometric view. They were it was an arms race to get to 3D.
PlayStation. It may look like a harmless bagel toaster, but inside is a deadly donut.
There's more?
Oh, that's right. The PlayStation is a mere $149.
But I don't even have a PlayStation.
You do now.
Remember, do not underestimate the power of PlayStation.
PlayStation had a big jump as well.
Yep, Sony getting into the market for the first time really with their introductory console, just the titular PlayStation. It kind of blew everyone away.
Tomb Raider, it was a big one, both because of the world and how you were able to really explore in it, and tits.
This is incredible. These games look good. The controller is good. The everything is cool. You've got memory cards, so now you can just like take your saves over to your friend's house.
Music sounds like the radio.
It's so amazing what they were able to do with the technology that was now available to them.
Nintendo was late to the game, and PlayStation had a big foothold with all these types of technologies.
It really kicks.
Action, racing, fighting, sports. The possibilities are endless with Nintendo 64.
We will change the system.
Only on N64.
Good game. The N64 was late to this generation of the war. It came out a whole year, or well, 2, I guess, in Japan. The real defining feature of the 64 was the controller. It was the kind of the first one of the generation to really mess with joysticks.
The analog stick was a huge addition, and with the 3-prong controller, it looked futuristic, so it had a cool look to it, but you could only use 2 of the 3 prongs at once, so developers had the choice of, do you move around with the analog stick, or do you move around with the pad like we were doing in previous generations?
A big title of the N64 is GoldenEye, and because of how you had to hold the controller, you couldn't really aim and move at the same time. That wasn't until the next generation, DualShock 2, and the Xbox controller, the GameCube controller, Super Mario 64, which is the first of the 3D Marios. Everything was in it. You had, I don't know how many levels, but all of the levels had kind of like Super Mario World. They had secrets. They had multiple completions for one level. And not to mention, it's the first time Princess Peach comes in.
Officially Peach. She reads her letter to Mario, baking him a cake. Come on over, I've made you a cake.
Dear Mario, please come to the castle. I have baked a cake for you. Yours truly, Princess Toadstool. Peach.
The multiplayer on Nintendo 64 was just at another level. There were so many party games. The ones that were a must. You mentioned GoldenEye 64, and that was actually something they didn't have approval for. That the multiplayer GoldenEye, which gave the game so much extra life of having it at a party and having that split screen with 4 people running around. Mario Kart, another must. For
Mario Party, of course, too.
Nobody knows every Pokemon. You want to be a great Pokemon master like I do.
Yes, I think Pokemon are everywhere, each with powers more awesome than the next.
Can you catch them all? Can you eat them all?
Pokemon is an interesting beast because it is officially owned by the Pokemon Company, and the Pokemon Company is comprised of Nintendo, the Creature Incorporated company, essentially does all of the art for Pokemon, and then Game Freak, who does all of the video games. Pokemon is currently the most profitable media franchise of all time.
They hit the ground running and they never stopped.
It's one of the top 5 video game franchises of all time. I think number 3 behind Mario and I think Tetris.
Gotta catch them all. What a hell of a slogan. We got 150 of them. At least when I was a kid, we had 150 of them. And you gotta catch them all. What a hell of a slogan. You need to buy all 150, kids.
The anime initially came out September 8th, 1998. One day before, so on September 7th, the Battleborn St. Anne was accidentally aired. So the 15th episode was officially aired before the pilot episode in America. Pokemon is still being aired, and I believe the new series comes out in April 14th. Pokemon, the video games, came out 20 days later. So Pokemon Red and Blue were released in North America on September 28th. Red is the main character of Red, Blue, and Pokemon Green. You play him in 2 or 3 games, and he makes an appearance in a lot of the games. So he's like Ash, but not a pussy.
Be a pinball champ, boy. This is Pinball Champ, not a toy.
Some play games that go, and some play games that go.
There's a new game in town. It's pinball fun for most everyone.
Pinball, the Addams Family pinball machine, saved pinball from just dying off to have a niche audience to this day. With the upgrades of what they started doing with the ramps and having a more dramatic curve on the machine.
I remember at the time, pinball games were becoming really, really popular. Metroid Pinball, Kirby Pinball, Mario Pinball, you had Sonic Pinball, you had, I think Pac-Man had a fucking pinball game.
And there is a Street Fighter pinball. Street Fighter, you had the little mini game where you beat up the car. There is a little mini game where your ball goes into this smaller area and you just try to smack the car a bunch. Anyone heading to Hackamania in Las Vegas, there is a pinball museum that I have not been to their new, bigger facility yet. I would love to check out the pinball museum, and still to this day, they're getting all different types of IPs. When I was in Tampa with you, I ran into the Venom machine. I'm like, man, I haven't seen the Venom pinball machine yet. Fuck yeah. And I have the most fun as Gwenom on the new pinball machine. So thanks to the Addams Family Pinball, those still exist for us autists.
Your mama's mama will feel it.